Right, so I'm slowly chipping away at all of the comics that I missed or catching up on over the past few months. Because I had a couple months where just basically I couldn't afford comics outside of everything else that I was getting, but now I'm slowly catching back up. So we've done Black Panther, we've done Spider-Man, Dark Web, which was just Dark Web, not a good story. But we're going to talk about an actual good comic today, or something that I've been enjoying quite a bit, and that is Fantastic Four. And Fantastic Four is weird for me because it's a book that I will always read when there is one. Like Secret Wars was the first like comic that I got into and read from like start to finish, and it got me into reading comics week to week and picking up like my weekly book and going to the comic book store and actually fully immersing myself into this kind of fandom. And that was the big thing with that story is it was a Fantastic Four story. So I feel a big connection with those characters and obviously Doctor Doom. The rest of their rogues gallery is kind of hit or miss. Mole Man is fun as a funny villain. Annihilus is cool. Galactus, obviously everyone likes Galactus. And I like all of the characters interwoven with the Fantastic Four, but I've always felt like the Fantastic Four books that I've read, none of them have really done anything for me. It's always a book that I will champion. I always will say a Fantastic Four book should always be on the shelf, but I've never been super excited to read Fantastic Four week to week. The Dan Slott run that just finished, that was the same. It was like, I'm glad that this exists. There is someone somewhere that is really enjoying this. But when they did the final like event, like the Reckoning War, I just zoned out. I just kind of was like, I'm reading this, but I don't know what is going on at all. Why is this an event, or being labelled as an event and being treated like an event when it's only happening in the pages of the Fantastic Four comic? And you know, this current run of Fantastic Four kind of, it's doing something very interesting, which is keeping very, not necessarily grounded, but it is kind of like grounded stories. It's so far it hasn't gone too bombastic or too out there. And Fantastic Four is always one of those ones where it's less about a superhero adventure and it's more about exploring, it's more about discovering things, it's more about like adding depth to the Marvel universe and exploring different multiverses and different like planets, and you know, finding out more about the universe, where every other book is more about the fights and more about getting to an action sequence. Fantastic Four, there is action sequences in there. They do have a rogues gallery and that, but it's never really about that. It's only really about fighting the villain whenever it's a Doom story, and then everything else is just, this is very much like exploring, and these are explorers and scientists, and then there will be a thing that they fight at the end of that arc. And this, so written by Ryan North, art by Iban Coelho. I think I'm pronouncing that correctly, I don't know, but I really like the art in all of these books. It's like that quintessential comic booky art. I'll have pages and the covers showing up. Covers are by Alex Ross. I'm looking down because I've got all of the names of people and the names of the creative team on my iPad, because I've been reading these digitally, because that's the easiest and the most intuitive way for me personally to read comics, and for me doing this that I can read comics. But if you prefer having a physical book, I did for the longest time, but then obviously here, boxes down there. You know, I don't live in a mansion. I don't have the storage space, so keeping them on here is the easiest thing for me. But everyone's a different person, and that's that. But I've been really enjoying the Fantastic Four book. It's been one that I don't know if it's getting to that point of being like, am I excited week to week for it? Because the stories have been very like, there's the first issue, Ben Grimm story. Ben Grimm, Alicia Masters Grimm, because they got married during the Dan Slott run, and for once it's a marriage that hasn't been completely destroyed, but they've only been married for a couple years, so you know, we've got to wait for Mephisto to get his hands involved in that. But yeah, they go out of the city because Reed Richards has done something, but are we going to find out what that thing that Reed Richards has done? Are they going to be like Spider-Man and have us wait 25 issues? No. Issue 4, the next issue, next week, we're going to find out what Reed Richards did. So, yes, Ryan North, perfect. Yes, you do your 3 issues of setup, explain what all of the members of the Fantastic Four are doing right now, and then you go to your like actual arc, and then you go to like explain, right, we've got the setup, we've got where all the characters are at this point, and then like, yeah, we're going to explain what is going on in issue 4, and that's perfect. That's the way to write a comic, because in this like TikTok era where no one's got the patience and no one's got the attention span to really like just wait on something, and especially like at least with Nick Spencer, when Nick Spencer was doing the Kindred thing, we were seeing Kindred at the end of like several issues, and the comics he was writing, at least for the start of it, were good. And then, you know, it kind of went crazy. This is the exact way, I guess with Fantastic Four you can get away with it, because not everyone's reading Fantastic Four. They don't have a big movie out almost every year. They're not the most popular characters in your universe, even though they should be the most important. So I feel like with Fantastic Four, you kind of have this ground of, we can kind of get away with anything. It's the same with characters like Daredevil, it's the same with characters like Punisher. The Punisher book at the moment, I'm so excited to get to that because I've been loving it. But this is like testament to everything that you can do with characters that people aren't going to necessarily care about with like certain storylines, and people aren't going to necessarily care if you change a thing about like the Human Torch or the Thing, and this isn't changing anything, it's not doing anything drastic, it's just they're not going to space. Like, there's an issue about Ben Grimm and Alicia Masters Grimm going to a town that's stuck in a time loop and stuck in like the 1950s, and this guy is just constantly wishing that that his marriage doesn't like blow up, and then Ben and Alicia have to convince this guy to stop wishing for his marriage, to not go down in flames, so that he can live a life, and so that the town can escape this time loop that they're in. And I think that's going to come forward. The second issue is about Sue and Reed being stuck in a town where everyone is a Doombot, and they've kind of settled into normal everyday life. But then when they see Reed and Sue, they're like, secondary objective found, kill Reed Richards. And it's almost like Dawn of the Dead, but with Reed and Sue. And then they find out that there's this old lady that Dr. Doom, or that Victor Von Doom used to have dinner with, and she, showed him kindness when he was a kid, and when he first came to America after his mother had died. So he decided to set up his first Doombot to protect her. And it's a very interesting story, and there are things that are so inconsequential, but they're like, yeah, oh shit, right, Dr. Doom isn't 100% a dickhead. He actually cares about people that show him kindness. And it's this thing that Dan Slott kind of tried to do with his Bride of Doom arc, where he asked Reed Richards to be his best man, and then the curse that he put on the Human Torch when he found out that the Human Torch was banging the woman that Dr. Doom was meant to be getting married to. Fantastic Four comics are weird sometimes, aren't they? And then we have the Johnny Storm issue, where he's kind of gone undercover to and he's doing his own, he's got his own job. He's changed his name to Johnny Weather, and he's working at a supermarket that's been run by a megalomaniac overlord who's yeah, you won't hurt me because you're afraid to burn people, but I'm not afraid to hurt you. And then Johnny gets chucked out of the building. So he has to essentially organize a strike for all of the workers, and doing that and overthrowing this business, he essentially saves the day. And then we get the phone call of Sue being yeah, we found Ben, and he's basically, there's a dome over this small town, and it's it looks like the Thing's rocky skin over this town. And then in the next issue we're going to find out what Reed did that made everyone pissed off with him. I was worried that what Reed did was a thing that happened in Axe or Avengers X-Men Eternals, but it's not. It's a new thing that's happening inside this book, which is interesting. I thought this was directly going to spin out of Avengers X-Men Eternals, because for some reason the Fantastic Four are a part of that book as well. I decided not to read that because despite reading Eternals that led directly into it, I don't read Avengers or any of the X-Men books, so I would have been completely lost. So yeah, I really like what is going on here, despite, and I think that Human Torch issue was probably the weakest one, even though it is like exactly his character, and Ryan North does get the characters of, you know, all of the Fantastic Four, and kind of the like weird obsessive personality traits of Reed Richards, the kind of just nice guy energy of Ben Grimm, and the kind of like, I understand that my husband's weird, but I still love him, of Sue Storm, and the like insecurities of the Human Torch, and all of that is in the book, and it's all done perfectly. And I could gush about the current Fantastic Four run so much, and I'm so excited that there's a Fantastic Four run that is like living up to that name. And it's like, yes, we should have a Fantastic Four book that is actually really good. And like, is it the best thing on the shelf? I don't know. I haven't fully caught up with Venom yet. I haven't fully caught up with The Punisher yet. I haven't fully caught up with Daredevil yet. Apparently the Daredevil book's really good. I've fallen off of it because, like, there's just so much. And, like, you would think that my favourite character would be at the top of my list of stuff to get, but there's so much. There's so much. But hey, I can start that back at the number one, and it is tying in with what's going on in Punisher as well. So yeah, I'm just excited for a Fantastic Four book that is really good, and for a writer that knows what they're doing. Because the thing with Fantastic Four books that I've always had is it would always feel like there's like no stakes, and it will always feel like the characters inside the book wouldn't necessarily take anything seriously. But now we're getting with like, and maybe it is because every issue has dealt with a different individual, and I do think it's interesting that Ben and Alicia were together, Reed and Sue were together, and Johnny was on his own. I think that kind of has always been the dynamic of Ben always has Alicia, and Reed and Sue always have each other, and Johnny's just kind of on his own. And he's almost like the black sheep of the family, despite Ben being the one that's not related by blood. So that is interesting. But I'm just loving this book. I'm really enjoying it. Let me know in the comments below if you're reading Fantastic Four at the moment. If you're not, I highly recommend it. It's promising to do some really interesting things, and it's so much better than the Dan Slott run. Like, that run was just confusing, if anything. It was just like, ugh. It was like an exam. It felt like an exam by the end of it. It felt like, what are we doing? Where are we going with this? Why are there so many words? But yeah, I really like this book. I really like what they're doing. And it looks beautiful. It looks good as well. So yeah. If you're enjoying Fantastic Four as much as I am, let me know in the comments below. If you are not reading it, go out and buy it. If you haven't been reading this, but you did read the Dan Slott one, what did you think of the Dan Slott one run? And what did you think of how it ended, and with the Reckoning War, and then the two issues that were Axe tie-ins? because I think those two were actually really good in a sea of just kind of complex. You know, the AXE tie-ins for Fantastic Four anyway were just fine. Were just kind of just good stories. It was just Fantastic Four does Die Hard, and yeah, that was a really good story. It was a really good 2 issues of like, hey, Sue Storm, she's actually really cool, you know. So yeah, let me know all those things in the comments below. Hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, hit that notification bell. I will see you guys in the next video where we will talk about Ghost Rider. Peace.